What is the true cost of forcing harmony between two worlds that were never meant to be caged together? I can still feel the weight of the mega ring on my left wrist, even though I took it off months ago. The metal left an indent in my skin that hasn't quite faded, a permanent reminder of the 247 nights I spent in Lumiose City, a place that promised me a glimpse of the future and instead showed me something far more unsettling. The brochure called it a dazzling metropolis where people and Pokemon would finally coexist in perfect harmony. The reality was a city that hummed with the same smooth jazz melody for hours on end, buildings whose windows were painted on like stage props, and streets that transformed into holographic combat zones every single night when the sun went down. This is the story of how I became complicit in something I didn't understand until it was almost too late. This is my investigation into the beautiful lie at the heart of Lumiose City. It's good to have company by the fireside tonight. I've walked a lot of roads since I left that place, and I've learned that some stories need to be told, even when they're uncomfortable. Especially when they're uncomfortable. If this story resonates with you, if it makes you think twice about the world we're building, hit that like button. Let it travel. Let other people hear what I learned in that city of light and shadows. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? I've met travelers from every corner of this planet, and I'm curious which road brought you here to my fireside. Now, settle in. Get comfortable. What I'm about to tell you is going to take a while, and not all of it is easy to hear. I arrived in Lumiose City on a Tuesday in October, rolling in through one of those grand gateway stations with my backpack and my starter Pokemon and absolutely no idea what I was walking into. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Not unpleasant, exactly, but artificial. Like someone had synthesized what they thought a city should smell like and pumped it through hidden vents. Expensive coffee, fresh croissants, a hint of that mysterious sweet scent that would later become infamous in the sweet scent incident. Though I didn't know that yet. Everything felt curated, designed, perfect. The city spread out before me in a massive wheel, all spoke avenues radiating from the central prism tower like the hands of a clock frozen at every hour simultaneously. The architecture was stunning from a distance. Tall office buildings on the outskirts, smaller Parisian-style structures lining the inner avenues, and everywhere, the promotional materials for Quasartico Incorporated's grand urban redevelopment plan. Their logo was on every street corner. Their promise was simple and seductive. They were building a place that belonged to both people and Pokemon, a vision of beautiful coexistence. I wanted to believe it. That first week, I did believe it. I checked into Hotel Z, this old establishment tucked away on one of the inner boulevards, run by a man named AZ. I need you to understand something about Arizona. He's over 9 feet tall. His eyes are the kind of tired that comes from seeing too much, living too long. He's 3,000 years old. 3,000. He watched an ancient war tear this region apart, built a weapon powered by the harvested life force of Pokemon to end it, and has been alive ever since as punishment. Now, he runs a hotel and greets tourists with quiet courtesy. The first time I saw him standing behind that desk with his eternal flower Floette hovering beside him, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He was a monument to catastrophe and nobody seemed to notice. But I was young and optimistic and the city was beautiful, so I ignored the chill. During the day, I explored. Lumiose City had these things called wild zones, patches of green integrated into the urban landscape where Pokemon supposedly roamed free. The official line was that these habitats were constructed using cutting-edge technology to give Pokemon places to live within the city. I spent my mornings in those zones, catching Pokemon, watching them interact, marveling at how seamlessly nature and civilization had merged. Except it wasn't seamless at all. The more time I spent in those wild zones, the more I noticed the edges. The boundaries were too precise. The distribution of Pokemon felt deliberate, almost staged. I could see scaffolding if I climbed high enough, access panels hidden in artificial rock formations, the subtle shimmer of holographic barriers if I caught the light at the right angle. These weren't wild spaces, they were enclosures, high-tech zoos embedded in the city grid, dressed up as parks. The Pokemon weren't coexisting with us, they were being exhibited for us. But the real education in what Lumiose City had become started happening at night. Every evening at dusk, something changed in the city. The streetlights would shift to this aggressive neon red. Holographic barriers would materialize out of hidden projectors, cordoning off entire districts. These became battle zones, and the transformation was instant and total. One moment, you're walking through a peaceful boulevard. The next, you're in a sanctioned combat arena where every trainer you encounter will challenge you on sight. They called it the Z-A Royale, this citywide competition where you fought your way up through 26 ranks from Z to A, earning points by defeating other trainers in these nightly battles. The winner, they promised, would be granted one wish. I joined because everyone joined. It was the only path to recognition, to status, to advancement in the new Lumiose. And I'm not going to lie to you, those first few weeks were exhilarating. The real-time combat system meant I wasn't just commanding my Pokemon from a distance. I was in the fight, physically dodging attacks, collecting the glowing Mega Energy orbs that dropped when my Pokemon dealt damage, timing my moves with cooldowns, commanding withdrawals when the enemy prepared something devastating. Every battle was a dance. Every victory felt earned. They encouraged sneak attacks. Bonus points if you crept up behind another trainer and landed a surprise critical hit before they even knew you were there. The game mechanics rewarded ruthlessness, and the other trainers adapted quickly. I remember the 47th night vividly, because that was when I realized what we'd all become. I was creeping through a tight alley in the Blue District, hunting for my next target to boost my rank points, and I caught my own reflection in a shop window. I looked predatory. My posture was different. My eyes had that same focused, hunting expression I'd seen on every other trainer in the battle zones. We were becoming the very thing the city needed us to be: competitive, aggressive. Too busy fighting each other to ask questions. And then I met Team MZ. Urbane found me after I'd won a particularly tough promotion match. They were friendly, enthusiastic, full of that infectious optimism that makes you want to believe the world is better than it actually is. Team MZ was a small crew commissioned by Quasartico Inc. to investigate the city's most pressing problem: rogue mega evolutions. Wild Pokemon were spontaneously mega evolving, without trainers or megastones, going on violent rampages through the city streets. Urbane, Lyda the aspiring dancer, and Naveen the fashion designer all believed they were doing important work, keeping Lumiose peaceful, protecting citizens from these mysterious incidents. They invited me to join them. I said yes because it felt heroic, because they were good people trying to do good work, because Quasartico was funding us and giving us access to resources, and it all felt legitimate. My first rogue mega encounter was a Victreebel in Wild Zone 3. I need you to understand what I saw that night. This wasn't a malicious Pokemon. This wasn't some monster choosing violence. The Victreebel was screaming. Its mega evolution was wrong, painful, like its body was tearing itself apart from the inside. The official briefing said these Pokemon were going berserk, but that word implies choice. This thing was in agony. It was lashing out because it was suffering, and when I finally managed to pacify it, when the forced mega evolution finally faded and it collapsed, I saw relief in its eyes. That was the moment the first real question formed in my mind. Not, why is this happening? But, what is causing this creature so much pain? I started paying attention differently after that. I started keeping track of things. 2 minutes and 23 seconds to run from the city's southern edge to Prism Tower in the center. 140 estimated steps from the outer ring to the heart of the city. 4 seconds cooldown on Tackle. 12 seconds on Hyper Beam. I collected Mega Shards by breaking crystal formations scattered throughout the city, then traded them at Quasartico headquarters for finished Megastones. Every path to power led back to that same corporate building. Quasartico Incorporated controlled the Wild Zone technology. They organized the Z-A Royale. They commissioned our team. They held a monopoly on Megastone distribution. They were investigating the rogue Mega Evolution phenomenon. And the rogue Mega Evolutions only started happening after their redevelopment project began. I started exploring the places the official tours didn't go. The rooftops where rare Pokemon spawned and you could see the whole city spread out below you, all those painted windows and repeated patterns, creating a vista that looked impressive until you realized it was essentially one massive stage set. The sewers beneath the city where the grayish water flowed and nocturnal Pokemon hid from the manufactured daylight above. The vertical spaces between the official map and the hidden city. I found things that didn't match the promotional materials. Broken holovators that citizens complained about in side quests nobody seemed interested in fixing. Buildings with mysterious damage around that sweet scent incident everyone whispered about but nobody would explain. And everywhere, the same smooth jazz melody playing on an endless loop, the soundtrack for a perfect city that never quite felt real. My teammate Lita joined Team MZ in exchange for lodging. Naveen joined in exchange for studio space. These weren't volunteers driven by altruism, they were young people who needed resources, and Quasartico Inc. was leveraging their economic desperation to build a workforce that wouldn't ask inconvenient questions. I started to see the pattern. The city's economy funneled everyone into the same channels. Want to advance? Fight in the Z-A Royale. Want power? Buy megastones from Quasartico. Want purpose? Work for Quasartico. The entire system was a closed loop, and we were all running in it like well-trained ratata on wheels. The breaking point came during my 63rd Rogue Mega encounter. A Camerupt, Mega evolved and screaming, rampaging through the Magenta district. By this point, I'd pacified dozens of these creatures. I'd collected their megastones. I'd filed reports with Team MZ and watched Quasartico's PR team spin each incident as an isolated event they were managing responsibly. But standing there that night, watching this Pokemon suffer, I finally asked the question out loud. What if they're not stopping this? What if they're causing it? Urbane looked at me like I'd suggested the earth was flat. Lida laughed nervously. Naveen just went quiet. Nobody wanted to hear it. They'd invested too much in believing the official story. Their jobs, their housing, their sense of purpose, all of it depended on Quasartico being the good guys. But I couldn't stop thinking about AZ. 3,000 years ago, a king decided he knew what was best for the world. He built an ultimate weapon powered by Pokemon life force. He created a catastrophe that killed thousands and irradiated the entire region. The energy from that weapon is what created Mega Evolution in the first place. And now, all these centuries later, a corporation was using cutting-edge technology to power a massive urban redevelopment project, and wild Pokemon were spontaneously Mega evolving in agony. The parallels were too exact to be coincidence. I started digging into Quasartico's history, found connections to Lysandre Labs, the company that fronted for Team Flare 5 years ago, when they tried to reactivate that same ancient weapon for mass genocide. Different name, same ideology. Same obsession with creating a perfectly beautiful world through absolute control. The redevelopment plan wasn't about coexistence, it was about curation. About forcing both humans and Pokemon into designated roles in a corporate designed paradise. The wild zones weren't habitats. They were containment facilities. The Z-A Royale was an opportunity. It was a recruitment tool and a distraction. The wish promised to the champion wasn't magic. It was a contract, binding the strongest trainer in the city to Quasartico's interests. And the rogue Mega evolutions weren't random incidents. They were environmental poisoning. The technology powering Quasartico's perfect city was emitting something, some kind of energy or radiation or toxin, and it was torturing Pokemon, triggering agonizing force evolutions in creatures whose bodies couldn't handle the strain. Every time I calmed a rogue Mega, I wasn't solving the problem. I was managing symptoms. I was helping Quasartico cover up an ongoing industrial disaster while they continued poisoning the environment. I was complicit. The Rust Syndicate, the criminal organization we were supposed to oppose, they'd been right all along. Their boss, Corbeau, with his poison-type specialization, wasn't the villain. He was fighting a rearguard action against corporate takeover, trying to win the Royale from the inside to earn the wish that could actually stop the redevelopment. They weren't perfect. They used underhanded tactics, but they were the only faction actually opposing what was happening. I confronted Urbane about it during a mission briefing, laid out all the evidence, the timeline, the connections, the patterns. They didn't want to hear it. Neither did Lida or Naveen. They accused me of conspiracy thinking, of letting the pressure of the Royale get to me. We fought, not with Pokemon, with words. With the realization that we'd chosen different sides of a line I hadn't even known existed when I first arrived in this city, I kept investigating anyway, stopped taking Quasartico's missions, started working with the Syndicate instead, trying to find concrete proof of what the redevelopment technology was doing, collected data, documented rogue Mega Spawn locations, mapped them against the placement of new Wild Zone installations. The correlation was undeniable. Every major cluster of incidents occurred within a specific radius of Quasartico's newest technological deployments. But here's the thing about proof. It doesn't matter if nobody wants to see it. The city loved the redevelopment, loved the wild zones, loved the nightly excitement of the battle zones. The economy was thriving. Fashion was booming. Lumiose was a city of light again, a beacon of progress and harmony. And I was a paranoid outsider trying to tear down their beautiful dream with uncomfortable questions about suffering Pokemon and corporate malfeasance. I made it to rank A eventually, not because I wanted the wish anymore, but because it was the only way to get an audience with Quasartico's CEO, Jet. She met me in her headquarters, all corporate Polish and carefully practiced empathy. I laid out everything I'd found: the rogue mega evolution patterns, the connection to her technology, the environmental damage, the cover-up. She listened, smiled, and thanked me for my dedication to the city's welfare. Then she offered me a job. She didn't deny anything, didn't confirm it either, just pivoted smoothly into recruitment, told me that someone with my skills and investigative instincts would be valuable to the organization, that Quasartico needed people who could see problems before they became crises, that the redevelopment was a long-term project, and yes, there were growing pains, but the vision was sound, a place where people and Pokemon truly belonged together. I turned her down. She smiled again, told me the wish was still mine if I wanted it. Anything I desired within reasonable parameters. I asked her to shut down whatever was causing the rogue mega evolutions, to stop poisoning the environment, to let the Pokemon go free instead of keeping them in artificial zones. She said that wasn't possible. The technology was integral to the redevelopment. Turning it off would collapse the entire project. Thousands of jobs would be lost. The economy would crater, and besides, they'd almost perfected a treatment protocol for affected Pokemon. In another 6 months, maybe a year, they'd have the problem completely managed. Not solved. Managed. That's when I understood. This was never going to stop. The suffering would continue, carefully controlled and quietly suppressed because the city's beautiful dream was worth more than the creatures paying the price for it. Quasartico had built a machine that looked like paradise and ran on pain, and nobody wanted to turn it off because the alternative was admitting we'd built something monstrous. I left Lumiose City 3 days later, didn't say goodbye to Team MZ, didn't attend the victory ceremony for achieving rank A, just packed my bag, stopped by Hotel Z one last time to see AZ, and walked out through the same gate I'd entered all those months ago. AZ knew I was leaving before I said anything. He had that look, the one you get when you've seen the same story play out 1,000 times over 3,000 years. He handed me a croissant wrapped in paper, told me to take care of myself, and said something I think about every single day. The hardest thing about living so long is watching people build the same beautiful lies generation after generation. Different methods, same ending. I still have Pokemon from Lumiose. They're healthy now. Whatever damage the environment did to them has faded with distance and time. But I think about the ones still there. The ones in the wild zones, living in constructed habitats with invisible walls. The ones spontaneously mega-evolving in agony when the technology spikes. The trainers still grinding through the Royale, climbing ranks, competing for wishes they don't understand are contracts. The city looked perfect from a distance. Every building designed just so. Every wild zone positioned for maximum aesthetic impact. The jazz melody playing on endless loop. That smooth, wistful, accordion-based soundtrack for a future that felt like progress. But up close, if you paid attention, if you looked at the flat painted windows and the repetitive patterns and the empty streets between the scheduled events, you could see what it actually was. A stage set, a corporate theme park, a beautiful lie built on a foundation of suffering, held together by willful ignorance and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, forcing harmony between two worlds would eventually stop feeling so much like a cage. The true cost of forcing harmony is that you destroy the very thing you claim to protect. You turn wildness into exhibits, freedom into carefully managed experiences, coexistence into control. And everyone calls it progress because the alternative is admitting we've commodified the relationship between humans and Pokemon into something that benefits only the people designing the cages. Quasartico Inc. profited. The city's economy thrived. The tourists kept coming. And somewhere in Wild Zone 3, a Pokemon that should be running free through actual forests is instead performing nature for an audience behind invisible walls powered by technology that might, any night now, cause it to mega evolve in screaming agony. That's the truth I found in the City of Light. That's the investigation that nobody wanted me to complete. I still feel the weight of that mega ring on my left wrist sometimes, even though I took it off months ago. That indent in my skin is fading. Slowly, but the memory of what I participated in before I knew better isn't going anywhere. I helped them. I calmed those Pokemon. I collected those Megastones. I climbed those ranks. I was part of the machine that made the beautiful lie possible. The hardest thing about leaving wasn't walking away from Team MZ or abandoning my rank A status or losing access to all those resources Quasartico provided. The hardest thing was accepting that the city would continue without me, that the redevelopment would progress, that the suffering would be managed just carefully enough that most people would never notice or care, that 3,000 years from now, someone like AZ might be telling a similar story about the generation that built a paradise on top of a poison foundation and called it beautiful. So that's my investigation. That's what I found in Lumiose City. Draw your own conclusions. Ask your own questions. But if you ever find yourself in a place that promises perfect harmony between humans and nature through cutting-edge technology and corporate vision, do me a favor. Look for the edges, climb to the rooftops, go down into the sewers, find the vertical spaces between the official map and the hidden truth. And when you hear something screaming in pain behind the beautiful facade, don't just accept that it's being managed. Ask who's profiting from the suffering. Ask what the machinery really runs on. Ask what we're willing to sacrifice for our vision of paradise. The fire's getting low now. Thanks for sitting with me through this. Thanks for listening. These stories need to be told even when they're uncomfortable. Especially when they're uncomfortable. If this resonated with you, you know what to do. Share it. Let it travel. Let someone else hear what I learned in that city of light and shadows. I've walked a lot of roads since Lumiose, met a lot of travelers, heard a lot of stories, but I've never stopped looking for those edges, those hidden spaces where the truth lives between the marketing materials and the lived reality. Because the beautiful lie is always easier to believe than the complicated truth, and somebody needs to keep asking the questions that make people uncomfortable. The weight on my wrist is fading, but I remember what it cost.